All right. So there's a lot going on in this quote for a very short quote. But what does this quote demonstrate about the nature of the Civil War? Maybe about the way the Civil War is progressing? What can we learn about this incredibly complex matter from a very short quote? Ellie, I'm going to start with you, sir.
Well, I was saying that like each thing he mentioned about the war, just like it took a different perspective.
Okay.
So like for the first one, if I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, he's like, I don't want to say acknowledge, but he's kind of understanding like their slaves. I mean, the South is reliant on the slaves, and they don't want to like completely take that away from them.
Okay.
And then the second one, he's acknowledging the abolitionist side of taking out or just getting rid of slaves in the South.
Okay.
And the third one, it's in between, like saving slavery and then just taking it out.
Okay, so based on this quote, what is Lincoln's primary aim in the Civil War, Christoph? Union. Union is the first priority, the second priority, the third priority, the fourth priority. That's it. That's the goal. That's the beginning point. That's the middle point. That's the end point. Lincoln's only goal, at least here in 1862, because this is early in the war, is to save the Union, to make sure the country stays together. That's it. It's that simple. Okay? So what can we assume about the war based on this quote? What might we assume or guess or surmise about the nature of the conflict by the fact that he makes this quote? Go ahead, take a shot.
I feel that this reflects that public opinion was very important for the war.
Public opinion was very important for the war or for
Any war.
any war? Keep going.
Well, particularly this one, and like more so that Lincoln wants to maintain it because he targeted like a positive aspect union.
Yeah.
Because no one's gonna entirely say no to union, but people are very like the polarizing subject of slavery.
Yes.
Has two very like distinct aggressive groups, and he didn't want to like appeal to either one of them.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows how important like maintaining like constant support was.
Yeah, and constant support for Union, especially here in 1862. Now, I told you guys last week that Lincoln's views on slavery as a institution never really changed. He believes that slavery is morally wrong, but his views on the government's role and what to do about slavery are going to evolve as the war goes on. Now, we're going to read his first inaugural address, his first speech to the Union, his first speech to the country as president today. And he's going to say something very specific about slavery and the nature of the war. We have this in 1862 in which he's saying, yeah, I'd happily free all the slaves if it meant saving the country. But I'd also happily free none of the slaves if it meant saving the country. And I'd also happily save some of the slaves if it meant saving the country. By 1863, we're going to see a different story from Lincoln in which he issues the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing, we'll get there on Thursday, freeing all slaves in areas that are still in rebellion of the South. We'll see a very different story by the Gettysburg Address, which you guys will read on. It's a very famous speech, very important speech. You guys will read on Thursday, in which he asks the country to establish a new birth of freedom. A new birth, meaning a brand new, fresh start of a country in which freedom is possible for all. And we'll see then again in an even further evolution of his views by his second inaugural address, in which he is a little more aggressive towards the abolition of slavery and the ensuring of equal rights. So it's kind of, fun's the wrong word, but I think it's very insightful as a student, as a teacher, as a student myself, always, to really look at the way things change over time and the way this helps demonstrate a conflict within the conflict about what to do about slavery. I think it's also fair to say, based on this quote, that Lincoln is trying to deal with abolition sentiments. That abolitionists are trying to lean on him and say, like, hey, here's your chance. End slavery. It's the Civil War. They're fighting for slavery. This is your big moment. And him saying, no, this is not the big moment. This is the big moment to make sure that we're fighting for a union to keep the country together. So today we'll talk about the fighting of the war, the way in which military and political actions are intertwined in Civil War America. Today, like I said, is text heavy, but we need to figure out. I don't want to lecture you guys about why the South seceded. I don't want to lecture you about what the South society is built on, because there's too many phenomenal documents that can do the job for me. And you'll understand why I say that when we get there. Fair? So we'll go through all of these exciting things. Here's your key concept. Here's your prompt. Jen, read it for us, please.
Evaluate the differing goals and approaches to the Civil War, comparing Northern and Southern perspectives.
Cool. So I think we saw pretty clearly what is the North fighting for in the Civil War. One word. No. What's the North fighting for?
The Union.
Union. Union. What is the South fighting for?
Independent.
There. Independence. Sure, first period, like, yeah, slavery, states' rights. Yeah, you're right. They're fighting for all these things, but they're fighting under a banner of independence. They are doing the same thing to the North that the American colonists did to the British. You declare independence, you fight for independence, you potentially, in theory, not this time, win your independence, and then you're an independent country. And we'll talk about some of the obstacles that come up from why the South can't win this war, really from the get-go, as we get going from today. So what are the different perspectives of war? I think it's important to understand that. That the two sides aren't fighting for the same thing. Right? It's unfair to say the South is fighting for slavery and the North is fighting to end slavery. That's unfair. It's unfair to say that anything except the South is fighting for their independence. They want to be an independent nation. For a short time, at least in their mind, they are an independent country. They're going to elect a president. They're going to elect a vice president. They're going to create a whole government. It's going to be great. We're going to read a fantastic speech. In my opinion, one of the most eye-opening documents in American history by the vice president of the Confederacy in just a couple minutes. And it's kind of going to do a lot to help us get some insight into what Southern society is built on. It's very offensive, incredibly racist. I'm really looking forward to it, not because I enjoy it, because it's just such a phenomenal thing to put in kids' hands to get their eyes on. So we'll get all that done today. Yes, sir.
Slain Camacho.
But I like Slain.
I know.
Can I give you somebody maybe like a little less likable?
Luis.
Can we do like the old show Survivor? Like vote him off the island? Can we like vote to keep Slain and instead vote to? Yeah, that's fine. Bye, Slain. What's up? Yeah. So first, Cisco, can you hit both lights for me, please? Thanks, Slain. First, I have something to show you that has nothing to do with any questions. I just want you to look. That's why the lights are off. Not this one. That's for later. All right. You right there, bro? Yeah. So this is a good chance to review ourselves and to remind ourselves how we got here. How we got to a place in which the South's going to say, we are out. Screw the United States. We're now the Confederate States of America. We are gone. So let's look at the way things have evolved. The red means a slave state or territory. The orange is a free state or territory. And I have 1776 as our starting point. Chavez, why 1776? Chavez?
I'm not good with dates.
This is not, it's not a date. This is something that everybody in this whole class knows. Go ahead.
When the United States became independent?
Yeah, the United States declares their independence.
Oh, it says right there.
You panic. Guys, I don't need you to be good with dates, but 1776 is kind of an important one. Kind of an important one, right?
Sorry, my mind is complete.
Yeah, that's everyone's supposed to know dates. No, you are. That's a joke from that movie. You are supposed to know dates. So, in 1776, where is slavery legal in the colonies? Everywhere. You guys all with me? Please, participation and energy on a Monday morning would be quite helpful if you guys were to... Everywhere. Now, where is slavery more prevalent? Yeah, in the South, from the Chesapeake, Jamestown on down, we see more slavery. Facts. In the North, there's slavery. It's not nearly as prevalent. So let's fast forward a little bit. We declare independence. We're fighting Revolutionary War for freedom. During the war, we see Massachusetts, should not be surprising, and Pennsylvania also should not be surprising, given that Massachusetts is built on the ideals of the church. Pennsylvania is all about equality and equal treatment under the law, from William Penn and the Quakers. Both of those two places are going to decide through judicial decisions, so through the court system, to end slavery slowly. During the war. The war ends with the Treaty of Paris. What year, Chavez? I'm just kidding. You don't know dates. 1783. At the end of the war, New Hampshire is going to also drop off slavery in their state. No more. So now the war is over. We have the United States. We have all this new territory from England because of the Treaty of Paris, 1783. And now we have 3 states that have abolished slavery. 1 year later, 2 more, Rhode Island and Connecticut, both in New England. Also should not be surprising. So now almost the entirety of New England has abolished slavery, and Pennsylvania. Is anybody shocked yet? No, nothing is surprising yet. Nothing has gone different than what we would expect it to happen in the issue of slavery at this point. Now we have a whole long window until the next state does anything. Let's see what happens. Let's fast forward. It's a cool map. I like this thing. Vermont. Finally. God, it took long enough. Now the final of those New England states, Vermont has abolished slavery in their state as well. So now all of New England is slave free. Why not this? What state is this? Maine. Is Maine even a state yet? No. See, Maine at this time is still part of Massachusetts. It's part of that Missouri Compromise that splits it off and makes it a free state. So in theory, slavery is abolished there too. It's just because it's still part of Massachusetts. The map's just not that intuitive. Right. Ooh! We finally added a slave state, Kentucky. 1792. Our first new state of the new Union. Our first non-13 colony state that has moved westward. A couple years later, Tennessee, same thing. So it's fair to say that in the early republic, the brand new years of the country, is the North or the South spreading out faster? The South, right? Because they have 2 new states. Interesting. Interesting. And then we have New York. They abolished slavery before even 1800 gets here. So now check it out. It's 1799 in most of the northern states, with a very small exception of New Jersey, which nobody cares about anyway because New Jersey sucks. With the exception of New Jersey, the entire North has already banned slavery by 1799. Who's president in 1799? Adams. Adams. Right, so this is in the context right now of the Alien Sedition Acts, right, the French Revolution, and even with all that happening, internationally, we're still worried about ending slavery up north. Okay. Then we have a lull, if you will, a dry couple years. 1803, we finally add our first new free state. It's Ohio. We know it's going to be a free state because of the Northwest Ordinances. That's the situation. There's the Ohio River. We're in good shape. Where do you guys think is coming next? North or south?
North.
Let's see.
North.
New Jersey finally gets rid of slavery by 1804, and now the entirety of the North has at least immediately or gradually abolished slavery. There it is. And there really is our slave versus free map for the rest of the next 56 years. Now look, there's a big window of time before the next thing happens. What's the next thing going to be? Louisiana, slave state. It's crazy that we have more people here than either of these states to be states. Why? What's here that allows this to be a state? The Mississippi River and the Port of New Orleans. Yeah, very good, guys. There's the river. So people go Kentucky, Tennessee, and they're going down the river to New Orleans, and they're there. Now, this is crazy, because right after 1812, we get a bunch of new states. You guys see that?
Yeah.
Why? Why do we have all those states in that small window of time? Kind of. What? No.
Louisiana Territory?
We got Louisiana, we got here, though.
Oh, yeah.
What happens here that allows us to spread out so quickly? Good feelings. Boom! Era of good feelings, post-war of 1812, natives are less of a threat on the frontier, and market revolution, transportation revolution, and there's this huge push of manifest destiny. Oh, what? It's all connected? Everything? Slavery, economics, politics, wars, what? All in this map? I told you I could teach a whole class of just election map. Or just one map. So let's look. And this is when you start seeing balance. Ooh, Indiana. Boom, free state. Indiana was a lot of native resistance until the War of 1812. 1816, the war's over. Indiana. Next state, Mississippi. Slave state. Next state, 1 year later, Illinois, free state. Next state, Alabama, slave state. So you're going, this is the key of balance. Slave, free, slave, free, slave, free. All because we've gotten rid of the Indians and the British on the frontier after the war, and we were spreading out rapidly because of transportation, infrastructure. The world is shrinking. We can get out to the frontier quickly. 2 more. Maine in 1820 is a free state. What's the counter to that? Missouri. There's a Missouri Compromise, and there it is. Boom. Add one, add one. And now we're pretty done for a little while. Check that out. after the Missouri Compromise, we don't really add any new states for a long time. Why not? We have all these states really quickly because the Mark Revolution, the Transportation Revolution, the Era of Good Feelings, Manifest Destiny. What happened?
All those things were like people alone and we wouldn't
That's not till 1832.
We know.
Boom.
Wait, yeah.
Oh.
Panic of 1819.
That thing. I knew it was
The Panic of 1819 hits. Everybody's broke. What really fueled that panic? Too much Western expansion.
Right.
People stop expanding so much. They move to cities, urbanization. They look for jobs there. They're spreading out to the west less. It's almost like we can review the whole class, which is one map and some dots. So we have a long period of quiet. The Missouri Compromise has settled the sectional issue, and the crisis of the finances of Panic of 1819 have kept us from spreading out very quickly. So let's fast forward all the way to, I assume there's 2 dots, so we're going to have some balance. Nope. Arkansas is a slave state. There it is. And Michigan is a free state. 1, 1. Balance, balance. And then another long window of time. Why? Panic of 1837. After the Bank War, after Jackson, under Van Buren. So again, we spread out, the economy collapses, we stop spreading out so much. It's almost like all these things are connected. It's wild. So a long time period of quiet because of the panic, until in the late 1840s and early 1850s it gets all crazy again. 1845 we have Florida and Texas. And the South's sitting pretty. The South is sitting pretty. They got where do we get Florida from?
Spain.
Spain. What's the treaty called? Adams-Onis. Good. How did we get Texas? Annexation of Texas. Yeah. Tyler on his way out. Yeah. Good job. So there we go. We got 2 slave states, Florida and Texas, and then Iowa. Video Iowa. First time I've mentioned Iowa, the whole class. Iowa is a free state. And Wisconsin is a free state. What do we just do? Add 2, add 2. We're in good shape. Unfortunately, 1848 is also the year of 2. Well, yeah, there's an election in 1848. Good. What happens in 48? There's 2 important things. One is unrelated, Seneca Falls. 2, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. We've acquired a whole bunch more land. New land, same problems. So let's see what happens here. What happens 2 years after 48? So what are we going to add? What's that going to be? California is a free state. And this is when things start to go south for the South. I will literally be here all week. Boom! California is a free state. Now, let's look at this. Because where now, because of the Compromise 1850, where can slavery spread to? That's not true.
just those right there.
Arizona, New Mexico, they're Utah territory?
Oklahoma.
No.
Kansas.
Oklahoma was Indian territory. No, that's later. Compromise 1850 opens this land to popular sovereignty. But does any Southerner really want to spread slavery there? No, the land is bad, the climate's bad, there's not enough people to even go out there. Hence, the Kansas-Nebraska Act of Douglas's, which goes right here. But let's see what happens next. So California comes in as a free state, 1850. Ooh, Minnesota is a free state. What's next? Oregon is a free state. And this is my point about this map becoming irreconcilable. The South looks at this map and says, well, shit. Because they have nowhere else logical to spread slavery to. The key being that I showed you guys that crazy election math on Thursday. Y'all were confused as hell. It cracked me up. I know, they were like, but what? This guy's trying to divide like 10 by 4. And, yeah. The answer is just 0. When the North has enough people, they can win the election without any Southern votes. And that's in 1856. And we've added more states since then. So the South looks at this and realizes that we are incredibly powerless politically. Because we're going to just keep adding northern states, immigration, population, cities, etc. And the South's just here like, well, I guess we're out. The last state to be added is a free state. Any guesses? Not yet. Kansas. Kansas finally settles all their issues and comes in as a free state because of Douglas's actions to send that vote back to Kansas to decide. Yeah. After the Topeka Constitution. They finally repudiate the Lecompton Constitution. They picked the non-slavery Constitution. By then, it wouldn't have mattered because the rest of the South's already seceded. So, moral of the story, and this is a good way to review too, visually, is over time, the South really made their own grave. There's nowhere else, and this is why we see in the 1850s ideas like the Ostend Manifesto of Buchanan, like, maybe we could just annex Cuba. We'll make Cuba a slave state. Why the hell not? Does anybody in the U.S. actually want Cuba? No. But they want the two senators that come with it. They want to try to seek that balance. So I think it's helpful for us to visualize how we got here by understanding that say we'd continued on this path. This is why the Republican Party is anti-expansion of slavery. You guys see why slavery would have died eventually as is? Yeah. That as we keep adding free states, that eventually over time, like these guys would be a huge minority in the country, and here we are. Yeah. So, good. I think a good review. Benjamin, can you do the light screen, please? I think a helpful way to visualize the way we got here, and also important that we understand from huge important piece from Thursday's lecture, this idea of there being three Souths. There's the deep South or lower South, which is heavily reliant on slavery, heavily reliant on cotton, slavery and cotton. There's the middle South, which is a little bit of both, a mixed bag, if you will. Virginia is very heavily reliant on slavery. Some parts of Carolina are as well. And then there's the border South or the upper South. The border South states that never secede. Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, Missouri. These states that have slavery but much less of it. They have agriculture but much less of it. They're much less cash croppy, much less Southern society. They're kind of that in-between time. So these guys are going to secede as soon as Lincoln gets elected. He's not even president yet. But it's a good comparison to like Van Buren when he took office and then the economy collapsed. He's like, I just got here. Right? Lincoln's going to show up and be like, well, what do you mean you guys left? I just got to the party. You guys are gone already? These guys are going to secede as soon as the war really begins, and these guys are never going to secede. It's important that we understand why and how. If the war is really defined by a fight for slavery, of course these guys secede first. Of course these guys secede next, and of course these guys don't secede because they're less heavily reliant on slavery. Less heavily reliant. So let's get into some text. But first, of course, a cartoon. Not a favorite. It's not even in the top 20. The fact that I have to qualify these things, you guys are so judgmental of my favorites. It hurts my heart and my soul, but you know what? Such is life. So I have a cartoon. I think it helps identify a little bit of what's happening in the war and maybe why long-term the South's going to lose this war. So take a minute with your partner. Just chat it out. What do you see up here? What's the message? What is this cartoon trying to convey? 1 minute chat. Go for it. Okay. So sexy. No, it's set it forward.
Forced to fight for come along and fight
All right, so first of all, do you guys believe this cartoon comes from a northern or a southern perspective? Northern, good, right? What are they trying to say about the South in terms of the Civil War? There's two messages they're trying to send. Go for it.
That the South's not really united.
Good. The South's not really united in trying to fight the war. Good. What's the second thing they're trying to send? What message they're trying to send with this cartoon? Go ahead.
They believe more in states' rights than the government saying.
That's a huge part of it. The South does believe more in states' rights. According to this cartoonist, what's the real purpose of the war for the South?
Oh, King Cotton.
King Cotton, yeah. They come along, you rascal. And let me tell you, in the 1860s, rascal was a very offensive term.
Really?
I want you guys to bring it back.
It's like what today?
You're such a rascal.
I'm on camera, so I can't say so. I don't know, bitch. So anyway.
Peasants.
I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad in your culture, in the way because you're a teenager.
Especially John.
Because you're a teenager. You know, if I get it, doesn't offend me. You call it whatever you want. But like in society today, if like a stranger calls you that, like that's reason to go. Fair. So
You don't want to. You want to do all of this.
I want you guys to bring back.
If I'm around,
If
you don't
you guys
wanna-
can bring back 1860s insults, that'd be great. So you guys can bring back rascals.
I'll bring back that 1812.
You peasants.
Yeah, peasant, rascal, rapscallions. So, you guys are excited about rascal. I get it. Eyes back up. Hear that? Come along, you rascal, and fight for King Cotton. Our King Cotton. So it's implying that in the South, it's a little bit implying there's a more aristocratic way of life, and the real king of the South is Cotton. What does Cotton go with? Slaves. Slaves. Yeah, so there's a lot embedded in this cartoon that kind of implies that the rest of the South isn't really on board with fighting for King Cotton, but they're being coerced into doing so. So, we got to read. We have some good documents to get into. We do. Because the South is going to tell us why they are seceding. Now, in 2018 society, we can get into this argument on the internet all the time. We can get into this argument in person all the time. There is this huge belief, because education has done this to the world, and a lot of education is controlled by old rich white people. And there's this argument largely in the South that the war was not about slavery. The war was not about that at all. The war was about states' rights. To that I always ask, well, the states' right to do what exactly? Oh, to keep slaves? Carry on. So, I think when we looked at America declaring independence, we looked at why. We looked at Jefferson's words to figure out what is America's justification. How are they justifying why they're independent? The king has left his soldiers in the colonies. He's taxed us unfairly. He listed out all the reasons, political, economic, social, that we are breaking up with England. The nice part is now for the Confederacy, we're going to have one of those things for each of the states. Each state is going to tell us why they are seceding. Now, they're all very long documents. I'm going to have you only read two, one longer chunk, one shorter chunk, from what I think are the two best. The first, of course, is the first state to secede, our good friend, the one-of-a-kind South Carolina. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you read this. And on the right-hand column, I want you to tell me all the reasons they give for why it's okay, why they think it's cool, why they're justifying seceding or declaring independence from the United States. So I'm going to give you 6. To read it, just on the right-hand side, identify all the reasons that they're giving for seceding from the U.S., okay? Go for it. Read. It's a good text. They're going to tell us why. Tell me, in the right-hand column, all the reasons they give that justify independence, so to speak. have all the evidence you need right there. You have 2 minutes left. Why? That's important. That may or may not be my next slide. Oh, so he's on a roll today. Okay. So what's their argument? What's their justification? Why are they?
Remember the compact theory versus the contract theory?
All the states came together to form this agreement, and then the northern states got together and the agreement. All right. So take a minute, talk to your partner. How is the South justifying this action? What are their arguments that it's okay that they can secede from the country and make their own? 1 minute, go. Chat it out. Identify some arguments. Say. Come on, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah, the non-slave countries came to the compact
It's like overall.
And it says that the union can
Nothing.
being half
The North was ignoring it, right?
No?
Yeah, that's basically it.
1017. All right. So let's talk about this. How does South Carolina justify their actions? Eliam, give me something. What have they done? What have they pointed out that says it's okay for them to secede?
the lower half is saying that the northern states are ignoring their constitutional obligation.
What constitutional obligation does South Carolina think the North is ignoring? I would love to. Just how good. Yeah! Very clearly they say that the northern states are the ones who are repudiating their agreement to return to us our escaped property. Go back to the Compromise 1850. That's the only thing the South got that they were happy with. Yes, sir.
Also on the top part, I took it as that he's saying that the president is not for slavery, so he's unqualified.
Yeah! Remember Lincoln's, we read this speech in the Lincoln-Douglas debates. We read this word last week, where Lincoln says very clearly, the nation will either be all one thing or all the other. It can never permanently endure half slave and half free. Now does South Carolina leave in the part where Lincoln says it has to be all one or all the other? No. They take that part out. They just point out the fact that Lincoln says it can't be half slave and half free. Selective editing. What else? Josue, how else have they justified their secession sale?
it says that, or I put the northern states with their treaties were hostile to slavery.
Okay, the northern states are hostile to slavery. Cool. It points out how all the states have passed laws that basically violate the Fugitive Slave Act. They're saying, wait a second, when we nullify a law, y'all threaten to send the military. When you guys nullify a law, nobody cares. And they use this compact theory. I told you that would come back. That the compact theory argues that the states have just made this agreement together to all honor each other's laws, and now it's the northern states who are violating the compact theory. The northern states who are violating their constitutional duty. It's the northern states who are ignoring the fugitive slave law. They're also mad at the Northwest ordinances. Right there. End of paragraph 2. They previously evinced their estimate of the value of such stipulation by making it a condition of the ordinance for the government of the territory ceded by Virginia, which now composes the states north of the Ohio River. Interesting. So, go ahead, Dylan.
Could you also say that their states' rights were being overridden by the government?
What states' rights?
Like, right here saying, but the current of anti-slavery feeling has led her more recently to enact laws which render inoperative the remedies provided by her own law and by the law of Congress.
Oh, yes. So the anti-slavery sentiment.
Yeah.
So what does each of these factors boil down to? Guys, all of you. What is each of these complaints, what issue is each of these complaints really with? Slavery. Front and center. So they're going to make a whole bunch of other complaints as well that all boil down to the exact, they're going to argue about tariffs and their economy. Well, it all boils down to, what's your economy based on? Oh, yeah. All right, turn your page. Now, when I took a class on the Civil War in college, most classes always focus on South Carolinas. Because South Carolina's first, and because it's South Carolina. It's easy to tell a story with South Carolina because it's South Carolina. But one of the fun things about looking into this a little further is that each of these states has their own secession argument. And some of them I think are even clearer than South Carolina's. So in the interest of not just making South Carolina look like the bad guy here, we're going to read a second bad guy. Georgia. Now I think Georgia does not get read as much as South Carolina's in classrooms because it's not South Carolina, they're not first. But Georgia, in my opinion, lays out their reasons for secession even clearer. So it's a little shorter. I just took a little chunk out of it that you guys need. So take 4 and tell me, it's a pretty straightforward question, why does Georgia secede? Again, not in my words, not in Eliam's words, not even in Hector's words, and Hector has the best words. Look at that guy. Beautiful. Not in some historian's interpretation, not in some story, not in a textbook, in Georgia's own words, why are they seceding? Okay? Take 4 and identify for me. Georgia justify their actions? Again, they'll make it pretty clear for us, thank goodness. About 10 or so more seconds. How is Georgia justifying their actions? Excellent. So talk to me. Rubia, how does Georgia justify their secession, ma'am?
Georgia justifies their secession for the fact that they literally give you a whole list
Oh, yeah.
In the text. They literally say they have endeavored to weaken our security, to disturb our domestic peace and tranquility, and personally refuse to comply with their express constitutional obligations to us in reference to that property, and by the use of their power in the federal government that have striven to deprive us of an equal enjoyment of the common territories of the republic.
Property. What property they're talking about? You can say it. It's okay. Yeah. And then what are they worried about with the territories? What? Yeah, guys. I know it's Monday, but help me out here. What's the big issue in the South with the new territories? What do they want to do with them? Yeah, they want to spread slavery. Good, thank you. Hilda, what else do they point out that justifies their secession?
Well, in the bottom it actually says like, the main reason was that the North, even if united, cannot control both branches of the legislature during any portion of that time.
Earlier. Whereas now, the North can control the Senate and the House because of all these new states. There's no more of that balance because California, Oregon. Chavez, what's up?
It's also as simple as he just says that the Republican Party, its mission is anti-slavery.
That's it. The Republican Party and its foundation is anti-slavery. Chris, what do you have to say?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Like
Ask away.
The three-fifth compromise is never like taken out, right?
The three-fifths compromise goes away when we free slaves.
So up to that point, it's still there.
Yeah. And the South is still that far behind in population, so it doesn't matter. You'll see why in a minute. So I think it's pretty clear when he points out that the question of slavery was a big challenge in the formation of the Constitution. It was plainly apparent that slavery would soon disappear from what now are the non-slave-holding states. The opposition to slavery was then and now general in those states. And now there's this huge abolition party, which really isn't even true. The Republicans are not a party of abolition. They're a party of anti-expansion of slavery. Georgia can no longer exist in this union, apparently. So all of these factors, what do they all boil down to for Georgia? Johnny, what do you think? All these factors, what do they boil down to? Slavery! They are seceding to protect the institution of slavery. It's their words. There's no argument there whatsoever. Now, constitutionally speaking, for your first question there, they're going to justify it constitutionally by using a compact theory. That the states made a compact with each other to uphold the Constitution. And because the North's not doing their end of the bargain, there's no federal government that is above the states The states, when they want to, can leave the Union because it's just a compact of all the states in the first place. There is no federal government supremacy. Each state has the right to join the Union. Therefore, each state has the right to leave the Union. Now, is this the first time the South has threatened secession? No. It's the first time they've actually done it, though. Keep in mind that we've seen secession as early as 1790 over the debate about importation of slaves. We see argument about slavery during the Constitution, which gets resolved by the Three-Fifths Compromise. We saw threats of secession during the Missouri Crisis, during the Nullification Crisis under Calhoun and Jackson. And then we also saw secession threats, which you guys read last week, over California. So the big argument, though, is that if we keep states' rights at the top of everything, then that guarantees everybody's freedom and liberty. Then it's states' rights that gives us our right to own property, in this case, slaves. And it's states' rights that will guarantee to us the right to have our property returned, fugitive slave law. And because the North is ignoring those laws, the South has no choice but to leave. The poor, victim, terrible, hard to exist South. That's so rough for them. So rough. So there's this rabid, aggressive group in Southern society called the Fire Eaters. They're these ones that are pushing aggressively for secession. And they are successful after before Lincoln even takes office, after Lincoln's election, in convincing the Deep South states to secede. One after the other. Starting with South Carolina, we have a domino effect of Southern states that are having conventions, they're meeting as a state, they're voting, they're seceding. South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, Georgia, Florida, all those Deep South states secede. Now, president at the time is Buchanan. He's only been president for how much longer? 2 or 3 months. Because we've already elected his replacement. Lincoln is not in office yet. We're okay. Lame duck, exactly is the term. He tells Congress, hey, Congress, those of you who are in your southern states, you guys have no right, constitutionally speaking, to secede. Now, Buchanan is a states' rights supporter, but you can be a states' rights supporter without thinking states have the right to secede. So he's like, you guys can't do that. Alabama, you can't secede. Mississippi, you can't secede. South Carolina, you're crazy. We hate you, but you can't secede. And then when those states do secede, he's like, but there's something I can do to stop you. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't do it. And if she does it anyway, what am I going to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So under Buchanan, he's like, you guys can't secede, but, yeah, I mean, because he doesn't believe the federal government has the authority to go force a state to do something. So Buchanan actually finds the worst possible solution. He finds the middle ground that pisses everybody out. He doesn't think the southern states can secede, but he doesn't know what a federal government can do to force the southern states to listen, so he just kind of sits there in his office and like, man, this is a dilemma. This is a really big challenge. This is quite the struggle. Oh man, what a problem that our union has. It's falling apart. Everyone's like, James, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. I can't do anything about that problem. So Buchanan just sits by and lets the Deep South secede. As the states secede, they begin immediately taking over all federal property within their states. What's an example of federal property that might matter? Forts, not that one yet. But yeah, forts that are in the state, courthouses, arsenals, like John Brown tried to take over. All those federal properties that belong to the federal government. Texas is like, that's mine now. Alabama, that's mine now. Mississippi, that's mine now. Fort Sumter is the exception because it's in the water. Cool. So as this is happening, the South's going to create themselves a very quick government. We'll talk about the government system in a minute. The South's going to create a government. The South's going to elect a president. Who knows the president's name? Jefferson Davis. I always tell you guys, never trust a man with 2 first names. Never trust a man with 2 last names either. Jefferson Davis. That's 2 last names. I don't trust that guy. Jefferson Davis is elected as president. Alexander Stephens is elected as vice president. He's from Georgia. He's from Georgia. Their early capital, their first capital they pick is in Alabama. And they realize that that's way too far to fight the war, and they're going to move their capital very quickly to Richmond, Virginia. Richmond, which is only, a 1-hour drive today from Washington, D.C. So the two capitals will be very close together. They're going to elect a president, Jefferson Davis. They're going to elect a vice president, who we're going to focus on for right now, Alexander Stephens. And Alexander Stephens is really going to give us all the evidence we need in the world to argue about what this Civil War is actually fought for. So, I'm going to have you guys read this important speech he gives. It's a speech. He gives it in Georgia. It is called his Cornerstone Speech. Who knows what a cornerstone is? When you build a building or do anything? Anybody? Who's ever heard that phrase? This is a cornerstone of what I believe in. A little bit? Kind of?
Like the base and the very bottom.
Yeah, it's the very, very foundation. So when you build a building, right, the most important pieces are that in your corners you have a strong foundation that holds everything else up. So it's called his Cornerstone Speech. He's going to make this huge argument about what really is the cornerstone or the foundation of this new Southern government. Now this time it's brand new. The South's all excited. We got this. We're going to fight this war. We're going to win our independence. We're going to have this whole society. We got this. There's no doubt in our minds. Southern pride. Another time I wish that my boss would walk by and be like, "What's wrong with this angry white man talking about Southern pride?" So, moral of the story, Stephens is going to give us all the evidence we need to really argue what the Civil War is fought for. Okay? So I'm going to have you, it's not quite as long as it looks, I made the column wider for your evidence. I'm going to have you read, and you guys will start chuckling and realizing how ridiculous this speech is, and we're about a third of the way in. I promise. It's enjoyable, not in a good way, like in a cringe way, like, oh my god, does somebody actually thinks like this? But he really lays it out for us in a pretty compelling argument. Keep in mind, this is not some nobody. Who is this?
The Vice President.
The Vice President of the Confederacy. Something that kind of matters. Later, yeah. So I'm going to give you 5. Just read it quickly, please. And tell me, according to him, it's his own words, what is the real foundation of this new Constitution of the Confederacy? 5 minutes, go. Quickly, quickly. What does Stephens have to say about the foundation of Southern government? focus on what is he telling us about Southern society. He makes it pretty clear. I think it's fair to say that Alexander Stephens is a terrible person. Takes a special man to say that. Yeah, he said all men are created equal. We were wrong. That was a mistake. Let's fix that mistake. I know. Mm-hmm. Read this. The government is founded on the idea that the Negro is not equal to the white man. So why wouldn't a pro-white man support that? If you feel like your life sucks, but at least. Also this real belief in Southern identity, Southern pride. Everybody's out to get us. We're the victim. We see that in a lot of the writing, no? Yeah. Oh. All right, take a minute and talk to your partner. What is Stephens identifying for us very clearly about the South? 1 minute, go for it, have a nice chat. Enjoy Stephens' own words against him. Yeah. It says the basic yeah, there was an error to sell that instead. Yeah, right? Like using science? Like, what are we talking about? Science, morals, philosophical reason? What philosopher have you spoken to then? That's the thing. Yeah. That's the thing that stood out to a lot of the kids that are like good readers in first year were like, science? Yeah. That's like, what science are you referring to? You tried. It's going to be a second argument for a long time. It isn't saying. I'm glad you think so. No. He obviously did not watch the NBA. You got a white dude dribbling off their feet. What physical superiority are you talking about? Right? But this stuff should make us like this. So, I'm going to ask you a couple things from this text, but first of all, who's a really big fan of Alexander Stephens? Now, who admires the fact that Alexander Stephens tells us exactly what he thinks so we can use that against him for the rest of the time? That's pretty great, right? There's nothing hidden here agenda-wise. He's not trying to make some coded argument, oh yeah, it's about states' rights and economic differences. He's like, no. No, we hate black people. We hate black people, this is why. So, he tells us at the very beginning what the cause of the Civil War is. We know he says so because he says, this was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present revolution. Line 5. The new Constitution. What Constitution is he talking about? Yeah, the new Confederate Constitution has put to rest forever all of these agitating questions related to our peculiar institution of African slavery as it exists among us. The proper status of the Negro in our form of civilization. So he says, we solved the problem of slavery questions. This was the immediate cause of the late rupture. What does it mean to rupture? To break. And the present revolution. Who's having a revolution? The South's having they're having a revolution. This was the immediate cause of the late rupture and present. It's pretty clear. He's from Georgia. So, he tells us quite clearly what the cause of the Civil War is. I think it's right. I think he tells us. Yeah, it's right there. Fast forward about 15 years, we'll have a speech from Alexander Stephens. We'll read it during Reconstruction. And he says, oh, slavery? Nah, that wasn't really the cause.
Is that what you were talking about?
The cause is actually, no, really it was a real big fight about states' rights, ideological differences about the role of government. We thought the federal government was being oppressive and the government was too big, so we were fighting to return to the roots of the revolution about having a small government. Slavery, that's like the 9th, 10th biggest cause. Yeah, it was way back. Bro, we kept this. We still have. Oh, you guys had that speech? I thought I told you guys to burn that. So, he makes it pretty clear why, in his mind, Georgia and now the whole South, because he talks about their whole Confederacy, their whole Constitution, has seceded. Ruby, what else does he point out about this? He takes it a step further. What else does he point out, Ruby?
Well, he started saying that the Constitution was basically incorrect, that it was morally founded. It was founded on things that were incorrect, basically equality.
Oh God, yes, it was an error to create a Constitution and a Declaration of Independence that argued that all men were created equal. That was an error. That was a big mistake. Jefferson, yeah, he's one of us. He owned slaves, but he was wrong. That all men are created equal? False. Now, does a lot of America believe that? Yes. To put it in a speech? Bold. Bold strategy. Let's see how it works out for him. What else does he keep going, Ruby? What else does he have to point out for us?
He started saying that, well, that basically black people aren't equal to white people. That slavery is a natural condition of black people in the time. And then he starts using science.
He's using science.
Stuff like science.
He's using physical truth. He's obviously never watched the NBA. If he argues that black people are inferior based on physical traits. So, and he makes it as clear as possible. Our government, unlike that stupid other government that believes all men are created equal, that mistake, those idiots, our government is founded on exactly the opposite idea. That's pretty much as literally as black and white as you can get. Its foundations are laid, its cornerstone rests upon not the belief, not the idea, not the thought, no, the great truth. That the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery to the superior races is natural and normal condition. This, our new government, is the first in the history of the world. Check us out. She's so proud of ourselves. We're first. Based upon this great physical, philosophical, and moral truth. The truth is even shown in science. Obviously, we all know this. The North is crazy. This is where it's at. Boom. White people up top. Proceed to give an awkward high five. Try to do it 3 times until it's right. So, talk to me.
So this sort of sets like a racist precedent for the South later on?
This is what sets the racist precedent for the South?
Bro, slavery?
So, but keep in mind what's happened with the defense of slavery. We've gone from arguing that slavery is good for the slave to now saying, screw what's good for the slave, it doesn't matter what's good for the slave. This is where they belong naturally. Big shift. Big shift. So this Stevens guy, yes sir.
Could you argue that Alexander Stephens could be the founding father of the KKK?
No, but we'll talk about him soon.
Oh.
Because he fights for the Confederacy during the Civil War.
Cool.
So, this text is fantastic because it tells us everything we need to know about this mindset. Now at the time, Jefferson Davis, the president, is like, hey, Alex, dude, don't put all our secrets out there. Like, cool it. But it's in the Constitution of the Confederacy. It protects slavery. It's in the secession documents. We're seeking to protect slavery. So all these fun historiographical arguments after the fact that are still happening in society today where it's like, no, the Confederate monuments debate. That's a huge present in society today. We can talk about it on Thursday if you guys want. This debate about where Confederate war monuments have in society. Like, those are monuments to a nation that was founded on this. This cornerstone that they make so explicitly clear. So turn your page. And now Lincoln shows up to be the president of a country that is missing a couple states. Now let me ask you a question. How come, if the South is all about this, how come we didn't just let them leave? Why not? Why can't we just let those deep South states, let them go, let them form their own stupid country, let them do their thing? Why not? Talk to me. You're right. Well, you're kind of right. How so? What kind of dependency?
South makes like raw materials with the cotton.
So economically they're dependent? Cool, what else? Talk to me.
I mean, they declared independence
Sure. We don't look like a failure to Europe, that our way of government doesn't work. Talk to me.
And if we were to look like a failure to Europe, they would more easily defy the Monroe Doctrine.
100%. Good call. That's a nice pull. That Europe, if we can't keep ourselves together, how are we going to keep Europe out of Western Hemisphere? Cool. Those are all really good points. They're all very short term, though. Long term. What precedent does it set if a state wants to leave, we just let them leave?
That we're weak.
Sure.
And that,
Yeah.
societies.
Yeah. That's back to the compact theory. That if a state can just leave when they feel like it, then we don't have a union at all. Right? Then next thing you know, Oregon's mad about something and they're gone. They're the Republic of Oregon. North Dakota goes and does their thing. They're the freaking Republic of Buffalo in North Dakota. So, moral of the story, like, we can't just let states leave when they feel like it because then you don't have a country at all. So Lincoln takes office. And this is the last text to read for a while. I know it's a lot of reading, but it's good for you today. I'm just saying, I could have lectured you about why the South seceded. I just think it's better for you to read it in their own words. I think it's better for you to experience the explicit racism of Alexander Stephens instead of me telling you about it. It's pretty cool. So Lincoln takes office and he's like, cool, I'm president. South Carolina did what? Georgia went where?
Do you hear some?
Yeah, they do. We do. We hear a bunch of states seceding. So he has his chance to really address the nation for the first time as president in his first inaugural address, the day he is sworn in as president. It's a much longer speech. I gave you the two chunks I think are most important. So I want you to read it and tell me, who does he put the emphasis on? Who does he put the blame and the emphasis and the problem on? And then, what is the general purpose of the speech? What is he trying to inspire in the people? Okay? Take a quick 4. And then we'll finish this read, and then I'll get through the rest of the lecture for today. It'll be good. Quick 4. What is the cause of the conflict according to Lincoln? And what is the general purpose of this speech? Go for it. What does Lincoln have to say? Answer the question for me. Good. 10 seconds. Good.
What is he trying to get at?
There it is. That's the word. Cool. So let's get ourselves up. I'm gonna forget. What does Lincoln blame for the problem? Talk to me, please. Linda, go for it. What does Lincoln say is to blame of the cause of conflict?
I said it was slavery.
Sure, absolutely. He says this is the only conflict that we have issues on. Jeremy, talk to me. How does Lincoln put the blame on the South? How does Lincoln put the emphasis for the war on the South?
He's saying that just because like the dominating party right now, which is his party,
Yeah.
saying that just because, just let me read like the first sentence. It says the apprehension seems to exist among people of the southern states that by the ascension of the Republican administration, their property and their peace and personal security are to be endangered.
Yeah. But what's he going to do about that? Is he coming for their slaves? No. He says it very clearly. I'm not going to interfere with slavery where it exists. I'm not. I don't think I have the right to do so, and I have no inclination to do that. I'm not coming for your slaves. He says the big problem, the only real problem in the country is about the expansion of slavery. So who has to start the war if there's going to be a war, according to Lincoln? The South. This is in your hands, not mine, is this issue of civil war. The government will not assail you. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors. We are not enemies, but friends. And then he appeals to people's emotions. That last line is very famous. Trying to appeal to the better angels of our nature. He's referencing patriot graves, people that have died for this idea of the Union. To your point, Desi, unity, unity. You should push the guys, hey, we've been through so much together. You're going to leave over this little issue of expansion of slavery to the territories? I'm not going to mess with slavery where it is. I'm not going to start the war. I'm not going to invade the South. If there's a problem, you guys are going to start it. Which does a lot to kind of flip the narrative. Because up to this point, the South keeps trying to portray themselves as what? Yeah, they're the victims. Oh, it's the big, bad, angry, aggressive North. It's the North passing laws. It's the North assailing us. It's so rough to be us, the South. It's so hard to not pay our workers. I think it's like, we're not coming for you. We're not coming for your slaves. We're not coming for your property. We're not coming for your peace. We're not coming for your stability. We're not coming for anything. But you don't get to just leave and expect nothing to happen in return. All right, so let's get into it then. So the war begins because of a beautiful place in South Carolina called Fort Sumter. Now, most of the forts in the South have been taken over by the southern states because they're all in southern states. Does that make any kind of sense? Mm-hmm. Fort Sumter is an island right off of the coast of South Carolina. So there's a bunch of forts in South Carolina and arsenals and all these things. Those are taken over very quickly by the southern governments. Because Fort Sumter is off the coast, it really is the last remaining fort in the South that is still controlled by the U.S. Army. So far, so good? So Lincoln decides Fort Sumter is getting really low on supplies. It's an island in the ocean, so what are they going to need? What? What do they need boats for? They're already on the island, they're good. What do they need to survive on an island of water? What? Food and
Shelter.
They're in a fort, they're good in shelter. They're in the ocean. Fresh water. Food, fresh water, supplies. They're running low on supplies. So Lincoln has a choice. He can either call them back and surrender the fort, or he can try to resupply them so they have their stuff. What he decides to do is to tell the South, hey, we're not invading you. We're not doing anything. We're not coming to cause any trouble. This is not a military anything. We're just going to send supplies to resupply our fort, which is property of the U.S. government. He tells them, it's not a military action. We're not invading. We're not going to attack you. We're just resupplying our own fort. In the inaugural address, he had promised America that he would keep federal government property in federal government hands. And this is him fulfilling that promise. I promised I'd keep our stuff. I'm keeping our stuff. Now this forces the South to make their own decision. They're going to either let Lincoln resupply the fort and look weak, or they're going to do something about it and they're going to start the war. What the South does, what Jefferson Davis decides, is to attack the fort before the ship even gets there to avoid the whole conflict in the first place. We'll just take over the fort. We won't have to worry about resupplying, and then we'll keep that fort. We're good to go. That's exactly what happens. So General Beauregard, the general for the South, he, from the coast of South Carolina, is going to overnight bomb and bomb and bomb and bomb Fort Sumter until the next morning they give up Fort Sumter, and now that fort is given then to South Carolina. On the morning of April 13th, General Anderson for the South surrenders, and the first battle of the Civil War is over, and the South wins. It's not really much of a battle. One casualty, one death. It's a horse. I know. You guys always get so sad about it. People died, man, whatever. Soldiers died, that shit happens. A horse? You guys are so sad about the dog in the Boston Massacre picture. Like, what, the dog? Oh my god.
There's always a dog in the picture.
So, the horse dies because a powder keg, a keg of gunpowder blows up next to the horse, and the horse splattered everywhere. Oh god. Yeah. Yeah. Horse stew. Yeah. Just horse, just like, oh god. Oh, good. Is that part of the tail? Oh, no. So, I guess it solved, that might have solved the problem with food supplies, though. So now the war has started, and who started the war? The South. Yeah, the South are the ones, the Confederacy is the one that is the aggressor. This causes Lincoln to call for 75,000 volunteers to put down this rebellion by force. Now, it is this calling for volunteers to join the U.S. Army to put down the rebellion, it is this calling of volunteers, very important, that causes the Middle South to secede. Once the Middle South, the Virginias and North Carolinas, Tennessees, once that, my green chunk from Thursday, so Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, that Middle South, once this happens, and it looks like it's going to actually be an armed conflict between North and South, those Middle South states all secede as well. So those next states leave, and they join the Confederate States of America. So now we have what will be, for the rest of the war, the Confederate States. Here's our map. So these deep South states, they seceded when Lincoln got elected. They're like, no, we're not going to live under a Republican administration, we're gone. It's these four states, Arkansas, Tennessee, Virginia, North Carolina, they secede after Fort Sumter. Very important. And that really becomes the Confederacy for the rest of the war. The only exception is West Virginia, who is a chunk of Virginia that doesn't want to be part of the Confederacy, and they form their own state and back to join the Union in the middle of the war in 1863. Good for you, West Virginia. It's the last good thing you've done. Now, these other four border states never leave. Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, Delaware, these four border states never leave. And that's very important to winning the war. It said in your reading, your chapter, that Lincoln said, I hope to have God on my side, but I can't win the war without Kentucky on my side. Why is Kentucky so important? Manufacturing is part of it.
It's a border state.
It's a border state. Now, Clay's dead. Really, it's the Ohio River. That we're going to use the Ohio River as a means to access everything else, and we lose Kentucky, we lose the river, and people. So this is our map going forward. These four states are gone post Fort Sumter. There is Fort Sumter, and that's our situation. Now, even after all of this, there's one last chance for compromise, and it comes from a senator named John Crittenden. Now, Crittenden steps in and he's like, how about this? Why don't we just all pack our stuff and go home? We'll just restore the Missouri Compromise line all the way across the country, and we'll go back to living the way things were. Go back to ignoring our problems. Go back to letting slavery expand southward. Up north, you guys can forget about it, and we're good to go. And these four southern states who haven't quite left yet are like, yeah, we can live with that. Virginia's like, sure, we don't really want to have a war. North Carolina's like, yeah, absolutely, why not? Arkansas's like, cool, more space to spread out, sure thing. The problem is the Republicans in Congress and Lincoln refused to have this be the condition. What's the one thing the Republican Party really stands for? Anti-expansion of slavery. They were just elected by the public as anti-expansion of slavery. So if they took this compromise, they would have been going back on what they got elected on and allowing slavery to expand. Also, California is like, wait, what? You're going to just divide us into 2 states? What? That's not okay. California's meaningless at the time. So Northern Republicans and Lincolns are not okay with this compromise because it goes against what they were just elected on, which is anti-expansion of slavery. So it's unsuccessful because of the Republicans in Congress and Lincoln. All right. So cartoon time, and this one is, in fact,
Cartoon?
it is good. Any cartoon that makes South Carolina look this bad is high on my list.
Is it top 20?
No, it's top 10.
Oh.
It's top 10. 12:27?
Top 5?
So, here it is. I'll give you a better... It's top 10. I don't know about top 5. That's a hard one. So...
Top 1?
No, maybe. So, here's the cartoon. It's not in your notes. It is in your notes, excuse me. So, I want you to take 2 with your partner. Take 2. What is this cartoon getting across? What is the point of view and the purpose of this cartoon? It's very entertaining. There's a lot up here. So you guys can soak it up and enjoy it. Take 2 minutes and go for it. Talk to your partner.
We can.
12, it was 12:27 when I said.
Was down with the union. And then we canceled it.
Breaker?
Yeah, it's a good cartoon.
Keeping track of every time it says cop.
The Secession.
You can't exactly see it.
Oh, is it
I think South Carolina.
What is this guy down here saying?
North Carolina.
What?
What is that guy saying?
This guy?
Yeah, going down like a little bit.
Focus more on the top guys.
Donkeys?
Okay. Because I don't know. I think are they?
Yeah, they have flags.
So then, oh yeah. So are they pretty much saying that like, oh, like they're falling off a cliff on like.
I get 2 hours more time every Monday. You get 22 hours yourself.
I don't know, but I want to say
You got it?
Oh yeah, that part's kind of crazy. And they want to secede, and then they want to secede from us all? Yeah, that's fine. 40 seconds. You can answer.
What's the thing that they're reaching for?
Secession bumble. Chasing a bee. Chasing a bug of some sort. Like that meme with the butterfly.
First Sumter that is already complete.
Wait,
Did you guys enjoy the meme that I emailed you this weekend?
Yes.
Did you get mad at yourself for enjoying it?
Yeah.
That's what Reboss said. He's like, I really liked it, and then I was really pissed that I really liked it. And I was like, sorry. Happens every
Yeah,
year.
we find like they push memes on.
Oh yeah, always. Send them. Reply all to that email. That's what they're for. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. All right, you're done. So, no way. What message is this cartoon trying to censor?
It's just showing how the southern states are trying to secede.
That's what it's showing. What is it showing? What is it telling? What story is this cartoon? I'll give you 2 minutes to talk about it. Brad, go for it, bro.
Is he saying that that the South is eager to succeed and get shit done?
And what's going to happen if when they secede? What's going to happen when they secede?
They're gonna follow.
Is it a positive or a negative?
I thought they were riding into victory.
Yeah, right into victory, right on. But keep in mind, like, what are they riding? Pigs, donkeys. Are they riding some valiant horses into battle?
No. That's why I thought it was like they don't care about.
They're riding their pig. They're riding their jackasses. They're riding a freaking goat back here, right? Now, of course, who's the first one off the ledge? South Carolina. And what he's saying is, we go the whole hog. So that's an expression like going all in, whole hog. Old Hickory is dead. Now we'll have it.
What does it say?
Who's old? Who's Old Hickory?
Bacon?
Who's Old Hickory? Jackson. What happened last time South Carolina tried to secede? Who stopped them?
Jackson.
Ah. So this cartoon, see? This cartoon is referencing the last time South Carolina tried, Jackson stopped it, but now he's dead and we're going to get it done.
What does it say in the bottom, like in the water?
Breakers. Big waves that are very dangerous. We got this guy, go at Carolina. We are the boys to wreck the Union. Alabama's great. We go it blind. We don't know what's happening, we're just going for it. because cotton is king. We don't care what happens, it's cotton, baby. Make some money. And then here's Mississippi, down with the Union. Mississippi repudiates her bonds. Go it, boys. And then here's Georgia. It's like, we're a little unsure what you guys are doing. We're going to kind of go our own way. Referencing that point that Luis just brought up about Georgia, at some point actually considers seceding from the Confederacy to form their own Republic of Georgia. So obviously, the point of view is very northern, very making a mockery of Southern secession. The purpose is to portray how terrible the South is at this, and we're going to see why in a minute. So, I want to make sure I finish this strong, guys. So this is the Confederacy. The Confederacy is going to claim they had Missouri, but Missouri never actually formally secedes. Same with Kentucky. But the rest of it really is the Confederate States of America. They have their own country for 4 years. And if you guys want on Thursday, we can get a little deeper into the legal ramifications of this. I'd love to, so if somebody could bring it up on Thursday. That'd be great about, like, were they a real country or not? We'll look at some of the arguments, pro and con on that. It's a good conversation, actually. So this is the government they're going to found. On February 4th, 1861, they have a country. They are the Confederate States of America. Now, they're going to actually just basically copy the U.S. Constitution with 4 changes that are worth noting. The first, states' rights has supremacy. States have rights over the federal government. States have the final say of what happens in their states. Let me ask you guys something. When's the last time we created a government in which states had the final say? The Articles of Confederation. How'd that work out? Yeah, right? When I don't know, when this thing called Shays' Rebellion happened, and we couldn't, call up an army or force the states to send troops or force the states to pay because we don't. Not a great way to fight a war with having states have the fight. We'll get there. Just try again. Try again. Again, let's give the Articles another shot because that was such a win. 2, the Constitution explicitly protects slavery. It doesn't say property or all other persons like the Constitution does, where it kind of dances around it. It says, no, we got slavery, we're keeping it. Congress shall pass no law abolishing slavery or slavery in the territories. That's pretty straightforward. 3, it references God directly. And 4th, it makes tariffs illegal. Because as you guys know, the South has always disliked tariffs because it hurts them economically. Other than that, it's pretty much the U.S. Constitution. There's a couple other changes. The presidents are limited to 1 term, and they're 6 years instead of 4. Except the country won't even last 6 years, so it doesn't matter. And the senator from Mississippi, Jefferson Davis, is elected president of the Confederacy. Now the Union responds, again, by appealing to this idea of union. We have here our famous bald eagle. The caption is, "The Union, it must and shall be preserved." If you guys remember, that's a very famous line from Daniel Webster in the era of Jackson from the Webster-Hayne debates about state versus federal authority. And what comes first, states' rights or union? Webster, of course, is a northern Whig from Massachusetts, is a huge proponent of federal government authority and union. And it's important that we are appealing to this idea of your country, union, us, we, on the northern side of things. Now, from a leadership perspective during the war, Lincoln does a couple of things that are scrutinized or carefully looked at. You could even say criticized by some for going too far with his power. But what's Lincoln's main goal in one word? Union. So he's going to do whatever is in his power to ensure that union is preserved. Specifically, he's critiqued for having too heavy of a hand, being too aggressive, and keeping those border states in the Union. For example, which is part of your next question, he's going to suspend or get rid of habeas corpus, which is basically the constitutional right when you are arrested to actually be formally charged with a crime and put on trial. For example, right now, can we just arrest you and put you in jail forever? No, right? You have to be charged with a crime, have that evidence against you presented in court, and then you have a chance to defend yourself. Lincoln is going to suspend that, specifically in border states like Kentucky and Maryland, and just put people in jail for trying to have those states secede and leave them in jail for the whole rest of the war. And it's like, well, yeah, but they are also guilty, if you think about it, of treason, trying to overthrow their government. So rather than have them tried and go through all that process, he just locks them in jail and says, forget about it. Lincoln's going to